Okay, two more presentations. So the next presentation is also in person. The last two are in person. The next presentation is being given by Miracle Ozzoude from York University on brain structure and network function are related to impaired cognitive motor integration in working aged adults with persistent symptoms after concussion. Miracle is a second-year master's student in the Department of Psychology at York University, Brain Behavior and Cognitive Science, under the supervision of Dr. Lauren Sergio. Prior to grad school, Miracle worked as a researcher at Sunnybrook Research Institute and Tan Center, where he studied brain and cognitive behavioral relationships in individuals with neurodegenerative and cerebrovascular diseases and concussion. Miracle's master's project will be investigating the neural underpinning of cognitive motor performance in working age adults with persistent post-concussion syndrome. In addition to being a dedicated scholar, Miracle enjoys photography and indoor rock climbing. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Okay, today I'll be talking about impaired cognitive motor integration, persistent symptoms after concussion, and brain function. Great. The purpose of our lab is to investigate the impact of concussion on people during their activities of daily living, especially on tasks that require the integration of multiple domain systems, especially the sensory motor and cognitive motor systems. And why is this important? I think we've already mentioned this, so I'm just going to skip through this. So during our everyday life, we engage in various activities with various complexity, especially on tasks that require direct interaction with our environment. For example, seeing, reaching, and grabbing a cup of coffee. In this situation, the visual input is directly translated into motor output, and this is known as the standard integration because it is the default system. Also, we can interact with our environment in an indirect way. For example, reaching for your computer mouse in order to move the cursor on your screen in the same direction as your mouse or in the opposite direction of your mouse. In this case, the visual information is spatially different from the expected motor output, such that it requires more brain resources in order to accomplish the expected motor output. This is known as cognitive motor integration, or CMI, because it requires the merging of cognition and motor system. And there are a large number of brain networks, white matter tracts, and structural gray matter areas that are responsible for the integration of this system. For instance, we found the activation of the frontal parietal cerebral network in adults performing CMI tasks. And this network, amongst others, has been implicated in concussion and also neurodegenerative diseases, in addition to lower white matter integrity and also smaller gray matter structures. Therefore, these may suggest that dysfunctional brain areas underlying CMI tasks may be used as a behavioral target for persistent PCS detection. Therefore, the purpose of our study was to look at the effects of persistent PCS on the neural underpinning of CMI tasks in working age adults. And we hypothesized that this would be related to lower white matter integrity and smaller gray matter thickness within this frontal parietal control network, and also it will be related to the decline in CMI performance. So we recruited about 22 working age adults with persistent PCS greater than 3 months post-incident. And to assess persistent PCS, we used the River-made post-concussion symptom questionnaire, which was divided into 2 domains. The first was associated with the earlier symptoms, the second was associated with the last symptoms. In order to assess the vestibular dysfunction, we use the DHI inventory. So this is known as a dizziness handicap inventory, and it was subdivided into 3 domains. So the functional, emotional, and physical domain. To assess visual motor performance, all participants underwent visual motor tasks consisting of 2 conditions. In the standard condition, both the target viewed and the hand motion occurred on this vertical plane. And in the non-standard condition, both the location and the direction of the hand movement were spatially different from the target view. This means that the participants move their finger on the horizontal plane on the opposite direction whilst looking at the task on the vertical plane. And this is a sequence of actions that were performed. So the white cursor goes to the yellow circle, which turns to green, indicating a go signal for them to move to the red target. And once they've gotten to the red target, the trial restarts. We extracted various metrics from this, including timing and trajectory. And for timing, we use the reaction time, which is the interval between the green circle disappearing and the start of the hand motion. And the full movement time was how long it's for them to get there. And for trajectory, we included the full path length as indicated here, and also the endpoint accuracy as indicated here. We also included the errors as indicated by percentage direction reversal, which means failed trial when they move in the opposite direction or in the wrong direction. We also included imaging metrics, namely resting state functional connectivity to delineate functional brain network. And we also included structural cortical thickness estimation, and also included diffusion weighted imaging to delineate the white matter the integrity of the white matter tract. So this is a typical performance for our standard task from participants. And as you can see, on the standard condition, the participant had no issues accomplishing the task in either direction. This is in contrast to the non-standard condition where they had very difficult issue, or they had issue accomplishing the task as indicated by the less smooth path length and also the less accurate endpoint accuracy here. Of the 22 participants we recruited, about 77% identified as female with a mean age of 42 and a range of 29 to 63. We also found a significant difference between the both tasks on the percentage direction reversal and also the longer full path length, which confirmed our hypothesis because high cognitive resources is required in order to move your finger in the opposite direction and in a different plane while simultaneously maintaining eye contact on the vertical plane. When looking at brain behavior relationship, we found lower thickness and the inferior parietal area was associated with worse vestibular dysfunction. And in the following domain, so the functional domain, the emotional domain, and the total score. So for the functional was, how do they feel engaging in social activity? And for the emotional, are they frustrated with their symptoms? And this area has been implicated in vestibular dysfunction. We also found lower thickness in the superior parietal area was associated with longer timing score overall and also longer reaction time. And in the non-standard condition, which also supported our hypothesis because this area has been implicated in visual spatial processing and visual motor control, especially on tasks that require heavy sensory motor and cognitive motor systems. When looking at functional connectivity, we found increased connectivity in several regions were associated with worse persistent PCS. And the following networks were identified: the visual network, the sensory motor network, and the frontoparietal control network. This was collaborated with other studies that find hyperconnectivity in the frontoparietal network within 5 to 18 months in post-injury in participants with moderate to severe concussion. We also found negative association between the salient network and worse performance on the non-standard task on full path length in the non-standard condition. And this was collaborated because this network has been implicated in visual spatial attention system in healthy controls and TBI. And also this network mediates the switch between the default mode and the frontoparietal network in anticipation of the task. So when looking at white matter integrity, we found various things. So we found lower integrity among several white matter tracks was associated with worse persistent PCS and also increased vestibular dysfunction. So for persistent PCS, we found around the corpus callosum spanier, and the white circle here indicates areas along the tract that were affected. And for vestibular dysfunction, we found this on the functional domain and the corpus callosum premotor area. And again, the white arrow, the white circle indicates areas along the tract that were affected. And we also found lower integrity of the inferior longitudinal fasciculi was associated with longer timing score on both visuomotor conditions, so deficit on them. So as indicated here, and this track, which is a longer associative track, have been implicated in visuomotor performance in healthy and TBI participants. When we looked at the track as a whole, we found various associations. First, we found lower integrity of the superior longitudinal fasciculi, or fasciculus, was associated with worse persistent PCS. And also we found lower integrity of the corticospinal tract was associated with longer trajectory score and also more direction reversal in the non-standard condition, which supports our hypothesis and also collaborate with us in the literature, because longer associative and projecting tract have been implicated in visuomotor performance and also susceptible to TBI and concussion. So what are our main findings or novel findings? So increase in functional connectivity associated with worse persistent PCS, and also certain sections along the white matter tracts, especially longer connecting and also projection white matter tracts, are susceptible to concussion in working age adult. Emphasis on that. And what are the implications here? So the increase in functional connectivity we found may represent compensatory activity in the brain, whereby optimal functioning brain regions or brain networks might adjust to the loss of functions by when picking up the workload of sub-functioning brain network. And possible mechanisms here might include functional reorganization and adaptive recovery, whereby the brain reorganizes areas in order to adjust for this. And this might happen in the presence of lower structural and white matter integrity, as evident in this current study and also studies from our lab. And this might suggest that, or it is important or imperative that concussion management takes into consideration the integration of multiple domain system concussion approach, especially assessments that require the integration of multiple domains when it comes to developing evidence-based diagnostic and prognostic tools that are sensitive to persistent PCS recovery. That's me. I would like to acknowledge my fellow lab members who are here and who are not present, and also the funding agencies and also my fellow mentors, and also the participants, because people tend to forget that. But I'd like to acknowledge them.
A great presentation, thank you. I know I have a comment, but does anyone else have? Yes, there, go ahead.
Hi, that was super cool. I was wondering if you thought that it could be possible that allowing patients to like practice the visual motor task and get better at it, you think that could be like a therapy to try and like undo some of these brain structural changes and help them get better at this task in general?
That's an excellent question. I guess in this case, we didn't really let them practice this because we didn't want to practice effect. So we just let them do the task to assess their performance there. But maybe that's something we can consider before to compare their practice prior to the main performance. Well, to compare their performance prior to practice and before practice.
I have a comment. I really think it's so important that you're working on cognitive motor integration and that you're looking at that kind of complexity when you're trying to detect these persisting effects of concussion. And the results remind me of the findings from the McFadden lab that I'm sure you know about, where patients with concussion who were cleared by neuropsychologists and by physiotherapy as being fully intact was I think a month post-injury. When they were studied using more complex paradigms like yours that involved cognitive motor integration, then you could see that in fact they were still symptomatic. So it would be great to have clinical measures that I'm not sure if you're working on that in getting this into clinical practice. Right, okay.
Yes, I do agree with you, especially when it comes to, because if you do assess different modalities, you might not find any deficit, but when you combine them together, that's where most pronounced. And also when it comes to brain structures, for example, the white matter that I showed, when you look at it as a whole, you might not find something, but when you look at it along the track, maybe especially on the longer tracks, or the ones that pass through areas that are quite important, well, everywhere is important, you can find certain sections along that track might actually tell you more than when you look at them as a whole.
I think like you have to push people with concussion harder sometimes to actually reveal their impairments. So anyway, it's great research.
Thank you.
Thank you.